Can sales like Amazon Prime Day or Black Friday save us from crazy RAM prices in 2026? Or is this going to be the worst Black Friday ever? Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. We're going to talk about all kinds of great stuff in our February Q&A, including GPU prices. Are Radeon GPUs doomed to the same price increases that we're seeing with NVIDIA right now? What's the cheapest gaming PC that you can actually build right now? Spoiler alert, a lot cheaper than you think it is. And should you be buying now or should you be waiting for prices to improve? If you get value out of this video, please give it a like or subscribe for more cool PC content. Let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by VIP SCD Key. Say goodbye to crazy expensive Windows licenses and that terrible Activate Windows watermark. Right now, use the links in the video description, head over to VIP SCD Key and get a Windows 11 OEM license for a great price. Pick your product license, then use the PC Builder discount code PC25 for an additional 30% off. Go to the activation settings on your PC, put in the code, and boom! Windows is fully licensed for a crazy low price. And they have Microsoft Office licenses too. Use the links in the video description. All right, Nilo Creo wants to know when's the next big sale like Amazon Prime Day or Black Friday for PC parts. Yeah, a lot of people with the way RAM and SSD prices are going right now want to know, Jason, can Black Friday save us from these RAM prices? Or conversely, is this going to be the worst Black Friday ever in 2026? We'll talk about those RAM and SSD prices, by the way. I know that they're not good, but I think people are making them out to be way more apocalyptic than they actually are, especially when we talk about the GPU crisis from 2020 to 2022. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. The next big sale right now is going to be Amazon Prime Day in July. So Amazon Prime Day in July, typically it's the second Tuesday, Wednesday combination in July, and then we get another one of those in October. Now, Amazon does not announce ahead of time when the exact dates are, but they basically do the same thing every year. Now, this year, because of the way electronics are going, maybe they will do something different. We'll have to see. But I would expect those two sales, the first one in July, the second one in October, and then we will get Black Friday when we typically get it towards the end of November. We'll also get some holiday shopping like Cyber Monday kind of stuff afterwards. I think this year is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I already said in previous videos that I think the AI bubble is going to burst sometime between, or at least begin bursting, sometime between April and July, because that's associated with corporate earnings reports. We just got a round of those in January. We're going to get another round of those 3 months later, right, in April. And then we're going to get another round of those 3 months later in July, basically. And that's when I think the bubble is going to start bursting, because it's going to become really apparent how much of a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme that AI basically is. I mean, Bernie Madoff is going to be completely forgotten compared. He was the big pyramid scheme guy, remember, back in the early 2000s. That went down $65 billion or something like that. People are going to forget about him, and they're just going to remember the AI Ponzi scheme, the AI pyramid scheme, because they're going to start running out of money to basically shovel into the incinerator, because that's what they're doing with that money, by the way. They're getting very, very little revenue out. Another article from Tom's Hardware just came out, but I'm digressing. So the big question is that going to happen in time for these big sales? July, I don't think so. I think October is probably going to be a sweet spot for building a gaming PC and getting at least a decent price. It's not going to go back to necessarily the golden era that we had between 2022, the end of 2022, up to really the end of 2024 before the 50 series came out. That was a golden era in PC building. I told you it was going to be a golden era during the deep, dark times of the GPU drought and apocalypse, when Ethereum miners were stealing all of our GPUs, basically paying any amount necessary. You couldn't even get one without buying it from a scalper. And I told you that was going to be a golden era PC building, and it was. SSD prices were insanely cheap because the whole market crashed and they were selling 1 terabyte for $30. It was crazy. RAM prices were totally cheap. Same reason, basically. The whole RAM market had absolutely cratered, and a lot of the RAM and SSD makers were almost going out of business. In fact, a couple of them almost did. So that was the down part of the cycle. Now we're in another shortage period right now, and everybody during the shortage wants to say, oh, it's the end. And listen, at some point, maybe it will be the end. I just don't think we're there yet. And I think by Black Friday of this year, we are going to see a significantly better PC building environment. Now, that being said, should you buy now or wait, right? That's a big question. Let's play everyone's favorite game. Should you buy now or should you wait? I honestly think if you want to build a gaming PC right now, probably now is the time to do it. I'm not sure that I would gamble to save a couple $100, because that's what we're talking about here with a full PC build, a couple of $100 on a $2,000 build, right? But I do think those Amazon Prime Day sales, if fingers crossed the bubble does start to burst the way I think it's going to start to burst, those will start to be, I think, a turning point. All right, Turbo Turnip wants to know, is worth it buying RAM right now, or should you wait for prices to go down? Necromancer, how do you perform kidney removal surgery, kidney appraisal to purchase RAM? Asking for a friend. I love that one. And then AKA, is the best option for upgrading now really just to wait for prices to go down? Let's just jump into what I think everybody's like super afraid of, right? Which is something like this. This is the G.Skill Triton Z5 Neo RGB kit that used to cost $120 because G.Skill always charges a little bit more for their RAM. And look, they got slightly better heat sinks on them, but now it's $520. It basically has gone up $400. People are like, well, this is crazy. 32 gigabyte kit, and this is just a 6000 CL30 kit. These used to be ubiquitous everywhere, and these were the best value kits, and that doesn't look like best value to me. Now, you can, of course, get kits on Amazon for like $380 right now, so I don't want to make it sound like this is the only thing you can get off Amazon, but let's just take a look here. Because if you have a Micro Center near you and you can go in store, or if you can order from Newegg, most of you in the US, they have these combo deals that are totally insane, and they're bringing RAM back to 2025 pricing before the crisis. So I just want to look. So this right here is 32 gigabyte kits of DDR5. You can see they've massively expanded the number of offerings here. And actually some of the best ones are with the Ryzen 9850X3D. Right now, you basically are getting the RAM almost for free. We'll go through a couple of those right now. And then if you want like a 16 gigabyte combo, they have a ton of those as well with CPUs. So you don't have to get locked into a motherboard, because I know one of the best things about building your own gaming PC is you get to customize everything to your preference. You get to pick exactly what motherboard, exactly what CPU, cooler, all that stuff. And so I get that this feels a little bit bad because this is locking you into a choice that may not have been your first choice. And I get that. I totally get that. I feel the lack of customization. That being said, they do have some pretty good options here, but I want to share some of these deals with you. Now, this is a deal that I think is just an okay deal, but I would pick it up if you want the Asus ROG Strix X870E-H. This is a super high-end motherboard. So you get a $340 motherboard, a really high-end X870E motherboard. And then what is the RAM? It's like $170. So $170, it's basically $50 more than you would have paid. And yes, I know it's V-Color, it's not G.Skill. So maybe it's a little bit more than you would have paid in the past, but it's not completely crazy, bonkers, outrageous. But then you go to a combo like this, right, where you got the 9850X3D with the X870 Tomahawk, and you also get the Crimson Desert game bundle because it comes with the CPU. You also get this cordless air duster. Let's just ignore that. Let's just count that as like found value, basically. And then you get the 32 gigabyte V-Color RGB kit. It's 6400 CL32 RAM, which is pretty good stuff. So if you add this one together, right, we come down here, the CPU is $500, it's the MSRP, and then it's 260, let's just call it $250 to make the math easier in my head. So let's take 10 bucks off. That's $750 right there. Even if we just take the current price at $849 and we ignore everything else, that's $100 for the RAM kit. That's pre-crisis pricing. And if you value the game bundle or that cordless air duster at all, then obviously the RAM is significantly cheaper than that. It may even come close to being free at that point. And it's not just for high-end combos either. I just want to say that. Now, I know this is 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's another thing that we're having to grapple with right now. We have come to expect 32 gigabytes of RAM as the standard for DDR5 systems. You don't need 32 gigabytes for gaming systems primarily. However, once you get used to something, it is, I'm not going to lie to you, it's hard. It kind of feels bad to go back. But something like this, a 9600X, and you get the cooler with it. You get the 240 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler. They say it's $85. It's not an $85 cooler. Let's call it $50. That's, I think, a fair price for it. And then you get a 16 gigabyte kit of DDR5, 6000 CL38, perfectly adequate RAM, as we went through in one of our videos once the RAM crisis started here. So if you add that up, it's about $200 for the CPU, and then it's about $50 for the cooler. So that's $250. That means this RAM kit is what, 80? Is my math right? Mathing, is that $80? Maybe it's 90. But basically, it's not an insane amount of money to spend. A kit like this before the crisis, it wasn't the best value to begin with, but you could pick it up for like $70. So it's like an extra $20 or $30 for the RAM kit. It's not like some huge amount. And I'm not trying to tell people that what you're seeing is not painful. It is kind of painful. I'm just telling you, sometimes, when you get life serves you lemons, you got to make some lemonade. I'm just saying, if you want to make some lemonade, here's how you'd make the lemonade. And here's another great combo that we keep posting: a Ryzen 7600X. It comes with the 240 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler, the same kit of RAM we just talked about. And it comes with the ASRock B650M Pro RS Wi-Fi. I love that motherboard, by the way. And ASRock has never had any problems with the Ryzen 7000 series. Check out our ASRock X3D video where we went through all the new data. But basically, if you add all this together, let's just call it $180 for the CPU. That's $230, $130 for the motherboard, $230, $330, $360. So what is about $70 for the RAM kit, okay? That's pre-crisis RAM pricing. So it is tough to look at that value right now and say, oh, you should wait. What are you waiting for to save $50 on that RAM kit in a year and a half? Isn't your time worth more than that? To me, it just approaches a little bit of insanity where we've decided we have to get this artificial price, and because of that, we're not going to value our time. I mean, listen, man, the older I get, I'll tell you, the more you realize the one thing you cannot get back in this world is time. You can't get time back. Time is extremely valuable, and we often undervalue it. So to me, I would buy things right now if you want them right now and you can afford them. Obviously, if you can't afford stuff, I wouldn't buy it. And by the way, there are DDR4 combos too if you need to put together a budget system. You can build a gaming PC for as little as $675 right now, and we will go through that build later in the video. Average F4 Enjoyer wants to know, will the pricing of RX 9000 series cards go up drastically like the 5070 Ti or just a slight increase? Yes, well, Radeon GPU prices have definitely gone up. It's not as bad as it initially looked. So here's current GPU prices for the 9000 series. We'll just ignore the 8GB cards because they're almost MSRP, but $439 right now is the cheapest 9060 XT. The cheapest 9070 was $589 yesterday. Unfortunately, that model has sold out. That was on sale. Now it's $629. And then we've got $729 for this. You're also getting, by the way, with the 9070 and 9070 XT, you're currently getting the game bundle. Now you're also getting a game bundle on NVIDIA GPUs 5070 or higher. So it's basically a $90 price increase for a 16GB GPU over the MSRP, which is $349. Now, not all the cards were at $349, but not all the cards are at $439. And we have seen occasionally this card closer to $399. If we look at this card, this is one of the cheaper 9070 XTs out there. This is Amazon. You can also go to Newegg site. $729, you can get the Sapphire Pulse right now, the 3-fan card for the same price. So there's a couple models at $729. That is $130 over the MSRP. And then we look at the 9070 non-XT. This is the cheapest one right now. But again, there was one that was $590 just yesterday. But let's just take it at $630. That's $80 over its MSRP. So anywhere from $80 up to $130 is the flux. Whereas meanwhile, if we go to NVIDIA RTX 50 series, what does a 5080 cost right now? Actually, $1,289, that must be. So sometimes what happens here is there's just not an actual card at that price. It's a scam listing or something like that. So let's just see where this is. It says it's at Best Buy. Well, maybe it's at Best Buy. We'll have to, $1,289. It's available right now. But yeah, it's a PNY. So it's gone up about, say, $300. And then you look at the rest of the cards because the 5070 Ti is also similarly priced. For 5070 Ti is right here, $899. That's actually the Asus Prime one. That's not bad. So that's about $150 over its MSRP. So you can see that NVIDIA GPUs have gone up by more. If we look at the 5060 Ti, for instance, $540 is the current lowest price. It's $120. So yes, it's gone up by more than the 9060 XT 16GB has. The 5070 is now at $629. You could regularly pick those cards up for around $500 earlier. It's gone up about $130. So yes, that's gone up a little bit more. And it's only got 12 gigs of VRAM, by the way. So NVIDIA GPUs have definitely gone up by more. And the question here is really going to be, can AMD keep pricing at a relatively good level? Because while they're also AI focused and maybe even too AI focused, at some point that bubble is going to burst and there's going to be a GPU market. Where do they want to be at the end of that? Especially given that the MI lineup, their AI lineup, doesn't necessarily compete with their GPU lineup the way it does for NVIDIA. If I were AMD, I would keep those prices as tight as I could, watch NVIDIA just give away market share, and then when the AI bubble bursts, you're in a much better position. Intel is essentially already taken this position, not necessarily with GPUs, but with CPUs. They've kind of given up on the whole AI thing. They realize that they are, at best, a distant third player to AMD and NVIDIA. So they're turning their focus back to consumers. I really hope that they also do so with GPUs, but we'll have to wait and see. Rohan Chauvin wants to know, will we still have a budget baller under $500 USD? Well, we haven't really had a under $500 brand new system is really worth anything for quite some time with an actual dedicated GPU, since probably the RX 570 days, but that's been quite a while because you could get that GPU for like $100 and then everything else is super cheap. But I will say you can build a gaming PC for insanely cheap right now, as little as almost like $650. I know we looked at the DDR5 combos, but I think the DDR4 combos are pretty compelling too. So here's no combo whatsoever, $800 gaming PC with a Ryzen 5500, games like a 3600 basically. It's really good. It is PCIe Gen 3 only, so I did go with a cheaper B450 motherboard. There's some B550s for like 10 bucks more. I'm just trying to get under 800 bucks basically. You want to spend another $20 or $30 kind of kitting it out a little bit better, you certainly could. And then we've got a 16 gigabyte kit of DDR4 3200 CL16, and not even the cheapest kit. I just picked Silicon Power because this is kind of my bellwether. $135 for that. 1 terabyte NVMe SSDs are obviously more expensive. You can still find them for $120. I'm saying $140 here just to give us a little bit more wiggle room. We went with the Arc B570 for $249. That's just the going rate. Great GPU, by the way, 10 gigs of VRAM. I love it. I love that GPU at $249. And then we've got one of my favorite cases, the BitFenix Nova Mesh Micro ATX for 50 bucks. 3 included ARGB fans. That is a great deal. That's how, like I'm saying, some of the other PC parts have come down in price. And then we've got the Apivia Prestige, great C-tier rated PSU for not that much more money. But let's go jump into some of these combo deals, and they start literally for as little as $169 for the same motherboard and the RAM that we're looking at, or similar kit of RAM. Basically, if you want a B550 instead, it's $10 more. If you want to go Intel instead, there's a B760 here for about the same price. And you can also get 32 gigs of RAM with the CPU if you want. If you want to go in that direction instead, I decided to go with this combo kit here. It comes with a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, same one we're looking at basically, same motherboard we're looking at, and a 16 gigabyte kit of G-Skill Ripjaws for $240. And if you look at what that costs, I think I got the wrong RAM kit in here, but it doesn't really matter. You get the idea. $239, I put that in for the motherboard, and I've zeroed out the cost for the RAM and the SSD. $675 for this gaming PC. It seems pretty insane for $600, and it gives you 10 gigs of VRAM. This is not an 8 gigabyte GPU. I know it's going to be somewhat CPU bottlenecked in some of the heavier CPU titles. Just turn the resolution up to 1440p. I would just play everything at 1440p basically. That I could turn it down to medium textures if you have to on some of those games that need 12 gigs of VRAM. And if you wanted to go with like a 9060 XT 16 gigabyte in here, you could certainly do that as well. Just swap in the GPU. It's like another $200 or so. For about $875, you would have a phenomenal 1440p gaming PC. So I just want to say that it is still possible to build some pretty insane gaming PCs. And if we look back at the $500 baller when we last had that, that would be like 2019. Something like that. So what is if we took in inflation into account, I kind of feel like there it is. I kind of feel like would $500 in 2015 or 2016 money in 2026 be $675? I kind of feel like the answer to that question is yes. So there you go. We're still very capable of building these gaming PCs. If you got value out of this video, please give it a like. This makes a huge difference to the channel. And of course, subscribe for more cool PC content like, did you check out our recent look at the best CPU to buy for gaming in 2026? We took a look right here. You're going to be surprised at some of the CPU values out there right now and how cheap it is to actually build a gaming PC at several different price points. Check it out, and we'll catch you on the next one.